The 2020 National Hockey League Draft is in the books, and the Sharks take an unprecedented 9 forwards. We'll tell you who they are. We might get into some free agency previews too, right now on Teal Town Live. Good evening, everyone. It is October 7th, 2020. And as we said before, the Sharks complete their draft. And a surprising one, to say the least, with the amount of forwards and amount of trades that they did to get up into higher spots. With that, welcome to Teal Town Live. This is your live interactive Sharks show on the internet, on YouTube, showing you all around the world. Follow us on the social, with Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, SoundCloud, Reddit, and of course our favorite Discord. And if you want to be part of the show, chat with us and fellow hockey fans in the YouTube chat on the page or the app. And of course, hit us up at tealtownusa.com. Hi everybody, I am PuckGuy14. I am joined by Mark Eisenberg and Kevin Lacy. Guys, another draft in the books. Mark, I'll start with your initial thoughts as to what you think overall the Sharks did today.
It was a very long day. It was a long and I think there was a clear trend that the Sharks are going for here: small and speedy and skilled. A lot of puck handling skills, guys that can pretty much play all over the ice, and speed was definitely emphasized with these picks. And apparently we just are only drafting forwards going forward.
That is going forward. And moving forward with his analysis, Mr. Kevin Lacy.
Hey guys, first off, I disagree with everything that you just said, because isn't this the vice presidential debate?
Kevin, your time is up. Okay. Kevin, your time is up.
No, let's talk about the Nashville Predators. Let's talk about them for the next
Kevin,
half hour.
your time is up. And like I said off air, this is a no-fly zone. So let's just, yeah, exactly. So guys, all jokes aside, let's get to it as to how everything went out. Of course, last night was round 1. OZZY WIESBLATT goes 31st overall. From the Prince Albert Raiders of the WHL. I know you guys briefly well, not briefly, but more so touched on it yesterday with Eric Landy. What did you guys take from this first round pick? Good pick, safe pick, off the board? Lacy, I'll start with you.
I really like this pick. You know, it doesn't fill all the boxes that I think the Sharks needed, although there are some guys that I feel like do. But OZZY WIESBLATT, I believe, is the most talented player that the Sharks drafted, which of course is great since he was the highest pick that they took today or the last 2 days. But yeah, just a really solid, pesty, small forward, but plays bigger than his physical size. And very talented, good skill, good speed. Just, I really like where the Sharks are going just in the draft. I do feel like overall they took a lot of the same style of player. I feel like it's the style that the Sharks really need, especially when you look at the teams that have beaten on them the last couple of years, like Vegas, speed and feistiness. So the Sharks are going to bring it back at these divisional foes here in a couple of years.
Mark, you agree or disagree with what Kevin said here? I think they got a guy that's going to be up and coming, and you need that speed for the future.
Agreed. I wanted the Sharks to take a top 6 potential forward with their first pick, and I think that's exactly what they did. They got a guy who has puck skills, speed, and I think what we can all remember from some of the Sharks teams in the past, they always could use a bit more speed. I think they're really going in that direction now with this pick.
Yep. And a couple of comments in the chat, and if you haven't seen OZZY's story, it's on sportsnet.ca. Zach, good evening to you, sir. Yeah, definitely check it out. Of course, everybody's talking about how Doug Wilson Jr. Signed the pick for his mom and dad, who are deaf. So very cool to have that unique perspective to it. Alicia, you get to see OZZY play several times this year. I love this pick. Yes, absolutely, and hopefully make the jump to the Sharks in no time. So, a lot of speculation going on about what the Sharks would do at 34. They moved down to 38 and picked up some extra picks for a seeing point for Kevin Lacy, who called it the night before. And with the 38th pick, they selected Thomas Bordeleau from the U.S. National Development Team. Had a fairly decent year with 23 goals overall in 66 games between what the National Development Team played and then the games that they played with the USHL. Not a whole lot of Americans went out in the first round, but then the development team, Mark, really started getting a lot of picks, and Bordeleau looks like a promising one.
Yeah, I was actually pretty impressed with this pick. Across the board, I think there was a pretty strong consensus that he was a guy who was going to go in the 30s, maybe in the 40s. I feel like the Sharks got good value here. The one thing I really like about his game, and I'm going to be careful with this comparison because I'm not going to compare him to Joe Thornton, but I hear he has great patience with the puck. He's great on the power play, and what he's really good at doing is waiting until he's got an opening and then distributing the puck, which I think would be great for the Sharks going forward.
Lacy, Bordeleau, looking Joe Thornton-esque. Yeah, bud.
I think that Thomas Bordeleau is definitely the fastest player that the Sharks drafted here this year. I love the speed. Basically that's a theme. There's maybe only one player that they took in the whole thing that isn't a fast, elusive skater. But Bordeleau definitely has the highest end speed. Definitely good offensive instincts. I like his bloodline too. I was a big fan of his dad, Patrick Bordeleau, formerly of the Montreal Canadiens, and if I'm not mistaken, was selected in the expansion draft by Nashville way back when. So he was more of a defensive D-zone style forward. Bordeleau is the opposite, but Bordeleau can play in both ends, and he's got a real nice skill set all around. I know that last night Doug Wilson Jr. in the post-first round presser talked about they had a guy in mind to pair with OZZY WIESBLATT. To me, immediately said, okay, well, obviously it's a forward. And I really did think that the Sharks would move down because most of the players that were at the top end of the board when it came around to pick 34 were defensemen. So a smart move by the Sharks, a calculated risk that I believe paid off because, as I said on last night's show, I think the Sharks really eye someone and stick to that like they did with WIESBLATT last night. I really think Bordeleau was their guy. And they got him at 38 plus another pick on top of it. So just good work by the Sharks all around throughout the day. We're going to talk about that a lot, but I really like what they did today.
Yeah, they looked like they had a really successful draft, even though it was just straightforwards, but they addressed some needs that they need to get some speed and some scoring forward-wise. A couple of things in the chat. Skylar saying, so the Sharks said if you ain't 5 or 10 or lower, GTFO.
And that's funny because I've criticized the Sharks on many of these draft recaps about why they're so reluctant to take anyone under 5'11".
Right.
Last year we did start to see this trend, and I think that the Sharks are probably looking at it as we're going to beat this thing home. But damn it, we're probably going to come out with at least two NHLers out of this. If we pick enough of the same style of player, couple of them will work out. I think that was their philosophy, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Bordelot has committed to the University of Michigan, so definitely you're going to see a lot of him in highlights here and there for sure. So moving onward, they had another pick later in the round. They took TRISTEN Robbins, 56th overall, from the Saskatoon Blades, who put up some really nice numbers, 73 points for the kid from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Actually was born in London, for that matter, and definitely a whole, just going through overall, and we'll get to a lot of them, definitely a worldwide draft too, Mark. They didn't go with just one spot. They also, they went, who was it earlier? Bordelot was born in Houston, now Robbins, a 5'10", 176 right winger from originally from London. But what did you see from Robbins? What do you think?
Just on that point, I'm wondering how many people who've played in the NHL are actually born in London. I don't have the number myself, but yeah, they definitely did take players from all over various parts, whether it was Europe or the U.S. I thought Robbins was a good pick as well. He was projected a little bit lower by some of the experts, but I'm okay with the Sharks once again picking ahead if they feel strong about a player. He's got good puck skills, good one-on-one player, and he also apparently has a good two-way game, winning, I think it was top defensive player for his team. So the team GM had a lot of good things to say about him, and you can see his numbers. He had a pretty strong year.
Kevin, care to add anything?
Really love this pick, to be quite honest. Everything that I've seen is that a lot of scouts had him rated low, but they all said probably deserves to be higher than where we. Sam Cosentino on NHL Network today was raving about this kid. I found a theme that Sam Cosentino was raving about a lot of the Sharks picks here early on, and so that's great for us because we have had past years where the Sharks draft someone and you see them scrambling on air like, he's a forward who is from Sweden, and help me out here, guys. So TRISTEN Robbins, last night I said I wanted the pain in the ass. I don't care if he's small or whatever. I wanted the pain in the ass forward who can score. And I think TRISTEN Robbins really nails this point home. So even though I think WIESBLATT he's feisty, but he's more gritty than he is just tough. I think that Robbins can put the puck in the net, has a great shot, and can go in there and just bang around in the corners. So I'm pumped for this pick. This is the most pumped I've been for a pick in a while.
And for a second rounder, you kind of get those little bit iffy ones there. But so far from these three picks in the first two rounds, I think Doug Wilson Jr. and the whole scouting staff did a heck of a job going for it. And I'm looking in the chat here, and they're mentioning Robbins could be an absolute steal from like a Tiger.
Yeah.
TRISTEN Robbins' new nickname should be Mr. Worldwide. Make it happen, Sharks. So
did I hear correctly that his dad was once in the organization
as a goaltender?
Okay.
Yeah.
Was with the organization.
Yeah, with in fact, he was wearing his dad's training jacket for his draft interview on the post media call. So, very cool indeed, and very nice to have a little bit of a tie back into the organization. And it's crazy to think that you're going to have ties back in the organization from the 90s. That must mean we're all getting older, all except for Mark, I guess. So. Moving onward to round 3, they moved up in the draft to pick up this guy. All right, Kevin, this is where you're going to come in, bud. Daniil Gushin. All right.
Cool. That's good.
Thank you. And a little confusion whether or not he has one L or one I or two I's in the name. So interesting. We'll find that out as it goes on. But the Sharks listed as one I.
The funny thing about that, Eric, was I said the same thing last year about your Tyken, and then that never got corrected either. So this might stick.
All right. 5'8", 165, a little guy, speedster, can play on both wings, from the Muskegon Lumberjacks of the USHL. Put up over a point a game, boys. Mark, what do you say? This is one of two guys we take from Muskegon in the draft.
Yeah, I think this pick, and we'll obviously get into the next one as well, are both kind of wild cards. They seem... And I'll just speak first about Daniil, but he specifically seems like he's got a great skill set. The general feeling with him is that he tends to sometimes disappear with certain games, but when he's on, he's on. He's a dominant player. So he had good numbers in the USHL. Obviously, it's not one of the indicators as to how he's going to be in the future, but he's going to Niagara at the OHL, originally Russian-born. He's got a great game, and he's highly rated across the board. So this could end up being one of those picks that in the third round maybe even looks like he could have been a first rounder. But once again, it's all how he develops and how determined he really is to be the best player he can be.
Definitely, Mark. I agree with that because to me, his biggest asset is his speed. So I would like to see some other parts of his development really push upward. I did hear that Gushin is good friends with Ivan Shakovich of the Sharks and Barracuda, and I believe they're training together right now. I found it funny on the conference call that Doug Wilson Jr. said, well, Gushin was on a really terrible Muskegon team last year, and I was thinking, that's funny. Ivan Shakovich was on a really terrible Barracuda team last year, but I digress. But yeah, just he's a small player, but I think there's a lot to like about this pick, and the Sharks won't have another pick for a while, right? Or no, they still have one more.
Yeah, they moved up in the draft to get to the fourth round. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they traded both of their picks in round 5 to get to number 4. But of course, Skylar with the super chat donation for $5, appreciate it. Of course, if you want to donate to the super chat, feel free to do that. All of the proceeds go back to supporting the show, or you can use our Venmo at Tealtown USA. But Skylar saying Shane confirmed that Daniil has one eye from himself. Also a third.
Oh, I hope he has two, otherwise he won't be able to play in the NHL. Oh, letter I. Oh, my bad.
Ba-dum-bum. Yeah. Also, a third-round pick that we like. Is this the Sharks drafting? I mean...
Yeah, that's a really good point.
You know, third-rounders have been a tough one for the organization. I mean, they've usually done later-round success, and we'll get to the later round in just a second. But Cole Campbell also brings up a good point with these small ones, and we'll keep going throughout the show with this, but the only thing that scares me is size. As we continue to draft little guys, no disrespect, but when you play St. Louis, Anaheim, LA, we are so small, tired of us getting dominated physically. And I remember those days of Alex Korliuk, and I kept seeing that when I was looking at the heights of these guys. They got a lot of skill. I just hoped they got the toughness to deal with the tall guys that are going to throw their body around.
I think that's where the Sharks really honed in on, though. Maybe not so much with the Gushin pick, but with WIESBLATT and Robbins especially, and Bordelot to an extent. I think they picked smaller players, but guys who won't be rattled. So I think we're okay on that, which is, again, great because I think the Sharks organizationally are a little bit small and a little bit soft.
Yep. All right, moving on to the guy that kind of stands out, literally, among these guys, Brandon Coe, the fourth-round pick, 98th overall for the Sharks, 6'4", 188, and I keep thinking, wow, I need to lose some weight here. He was a winger from the North Bay Battalion of the OHL, 57 points, 60 games. What did you think of this one? This kind of threw the things off a little bit, Mark.
Yeah, nice change of pace here, going with some size. He's, like I said about the previous player, he's kind of a wild card. I've seen some people say that he's got a first-round tool set. Doesn't mean he's using that tool set to the full abilities, but he's got a first-round tool set. Had an okay year in the OHL. Obviously, you'd expect more scoring from someone who's been in the league for a little bit. But he's got size, he's got tools. I guess the Sharks feel they can work with that, and if they believe they can get the best out of him, then once again, them going for a guy that they truly want, obviously, since they traded up for the pick.
Kev?
Yeah, first off, regarding the trade to get this pick, I was a little annoyed because this was around the point that the NHL Network broadcast just decided to stop reporting trades because they were interviewing Will Culley, who got drafted by the Rangers, and he's talking about Star Wars, and I see the little graphic switch from Montreal to the Sharks, and I'm like, whoa, what happened? Okay, we have a pick now. Cool. Awesome. And then they say, now let's talk about Sam Stang, who was picked by Detroit. And I'm like, no, let's talk about the trade that just happened on your screen that you didn't even. So that drove me nuts. But good to see the Sharks moving up, getting a much bigger player than the style of pick they've had so far with Brandon Coe. The thing is, when the trade happened, I'm looking at Bob McKenzie's remaining available list, and Coe was the highest available according to him, so that made me happy. Big size, good skill, as Mark said. I know that his skating has come into question in the sense of speed alone. Apparently, Coe is actually a very good skater at 6'5", but he's not a fast skater. So hopefully, with some development and I forget who the Sharks skating coach is, but he's so fast and so awesome to watch. I hope
Paging Rocket Backhander. I know she knows off the top of her head.
Yeah, because we both marvel at his skating. So hopefully Brandon Coe hooks up with him soon, and we'll have a swift skating 6'5" winger. That'll be cool.
Yeah, and just to make a correction here, the Sharks acquired Montreal's 4th-round pick, which was that 98th overall, to select Coe. It was for Washington's 2021 3rd-round pick. That was the one that they acquired in the Brendan Dillon trade. So essentially, you're going to have Brandon Coe for Brendan Dillon, who signed with the Capitals. We'll get to that in a little bit here, but the Sharks did trade their 2 picks later on, and then they decided to wait a couple rounds and go to the 7th round, where we know their late round picks have been very, very successful and really achieved status. We won't mention some guy that was in the Stanley Cup final who almost won the Conn Smythe, Joe Pavelski, but I digress. But with their first pick in the 7th round, taking 196th overall, Alex Young, 5'10", 170-pound center from the Canmore Eagles of the Alberta Junior Hockey League. Some pretty impressive numbers. I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, the AJHL is a kind of equivalent to the BCHL, where it's kind of like a Tier 2 junior league.
It's Junior B.
So guys, I'll start with you, Mark. Alex Young, what do you think of the guy?
Full disclosure, I actually don't have a ton of information on him. I feel like he was kind of a classic Sharks guy where you completely know nothing about him. He's very rarely rated by anyone. I think the only rating I could even find for him was Futures Consideration had him in the top 200, but nothing high. I'm rarely ever going to complain about a 7th-round pick. You never know what scout has seen this guy play and may just see something that no one else does. I know he had really good stats in a league that tends to good stats, but that's really all I know. He's going to college next year. He's going to be at Colgate, so we'll have a little bit more exposure to what he can do next year. I know he's born in Calgary as well.
Something that Doug Wilson Jr. mentioned about Alex Young was he's a guy that, quote, we should have drafted him last year. So he's been on the radar for a while. That struck me a bit odd when you're talking about a junior B player, but he has led his team, if not the league, in scoring the last 2 seasons. So that's a positive. I do look at Alex Young as Ian Reed and I like to refer to. He's a guy. I don't see anything particularly glaring about him, but so he's definitely the we'll see type of character here. I will say, though, Alex Young, for a draft that was littered with names that are, even for me, a little bit puzzling. Alex Young is the easiest name you're going to say all week.
All right. And Kyle Hipwell correcting me, and thank you very much for that. The AJHL is Junior A for kids planning to go to college route versus WHL, and that's where the similarity with the BCHL comes into play, along with the SAS Junior Hockey League, where we know from the Broncos. All right, so appreciate that, Kyle. Thank you very much for the correction. We always want to make sure we get the accurate information on that one. Moving onward to did I skip one?
Yeah,
I did. Yep, there we go. Adam Orakska, 201st overall in round 7. Another 5'10", 178 right winger. I would assume he played a little bit with is it Alexi or Alexis Lafreniere? In Alexi from the Rimouski Oceanic of the Quebec League. What do you guys think of this one? And I know we're getting in round 7, so there's kind of like, almost like drawing out of a hat a little bit. But anything that you've heard from
regarding
Raksa?
Adam Rashka, he, from what I hear, oozes talent, which is great as a 7th round pick. I heard that his biggest knock is that he's kind of sloppy with the puck, which says to me he tries a lot of creative things, but he's not so successful in making those things happen. And then the puck goes the other way. I have heard I should have mentioned about Gushchin. I heard he's got an endless motor as well. So that's, again, another theme with the picks. I've heard the same thing about Rashka. I have heard that he is sufficient in his own end. I just hope that if he's got all this offensive creativity with some development, some training camps, being around better players than the level he's at right now, I'm hoping that'll spark something in him, that he's able to improve all around. You got anything, Mark?
I actually wanted to add one quick thing on the AJHL. Kel McCarr actually came from the AJHL prior to going to UMass, and kind of put the league not necessarily on the map, but got it a little bit more respect. Prior to that, I believe there was only one guy who had ever had an impact in the NHL who came from the AJHL. But it seems as though the league's getting a bit more attention now. Going back to Adam Rashka, sounds like he's a hard-working player, a little bit scrappy. His numbers weren't terribly impressive for the QMJHL, but he was also kind of buried in that lineup. He had an injury, I know, that ended his season, so he didn't get a ton of games in last year. I think he only played 35 or 36 games. But we'll see what happens this year. He's still going to be with Rimouski, which is generally a pretty good organization in the QMJHL.
Yeah, they've produced some guys, like Vinny LeCavalier, Sidney Crosby, Lafreniere. Not putting him on the same boat as that, although, of course, if he develops nicely, that'd be great to see, and you would love to see that happening. Excuse me. So let's get back into...
Hang on. I got one more thing here.
Sorry, my bad.
It's not even about the Sharks. It's just the player that was picked out. Talk about names. The player that was picked after Adam Rashka is named Gunnar Wolf Fontaine, picked by Nashville. Gunnar Wolf Fontaine? How can you top that? Oh, my goodness.
I mean, it's not in the draft, but Ivan Yuzhenkov is one of my favorite names to say. So, but yeah, Gunnar
Wolf Fontaine. Wow.
Not to be confused with Gunnar Stahl from D2 the Mighty Ducks. All right.
Second Gunnar Stahl reference I've heard today. Go figure.
My bad. All right. Moving onward to the 206 pick, Linus Oberg. 6 foot, another 6 foot. What happened here? 203-pound center. Oh boy, you're gonna have to help me out with this one, Kevin. I'm glad you're here. What's that?
Örebro.
Sure. Örebro, HK in the Swedish Hockey League, put up some decent numbers there. When you get into the 7th round, you kind of you see a little more things to work on to develop. So you love to see, and hopefully picks up a gem in the rough.
With Linus Oberg, the first thing that comes to mind is I'm pretty sure Linus Karlsson, who was a 3rd-round pick a couple of years ago, also comes from the Örebro system. Of course, we eventually traded him to get Jannik Hansen, I believe. I don't have a whole lot about Linus Oberg other than I do know he played for the under-20 Sweden team last year, I believe, in a bottom 6 role. So far in the Swedish Hockey League this year, and this was kind of a theme throughout the draft, not just the Sharks. So far this year, he has 5 goals in the SHL. He only had 4 all of last year. So he had 4 in 37 last year and 5 in 4 games this year. That stat might be a little skewed because, for starters, the younger players like Oberg will not get a whole heck of a lot of ice time, or they might dress and not even see the ice through a game. So I think that's where the 4 goals in 37 games comes from last year. But as we saw with many players picked today, a lot of the stories were, this guy has great stats so far in 2021 for their European club. And it almost seems like a lot of teams were trying to showcase players intentionally to elevate them in the draft. So the 5 goals in 4 games is really nice for him so far. He's playing tomorrow against Malmo, which Fredrik Handemark, who's a Sharks player who I believe will compete for the 3rd or 4th line center job. They're playing against each other tomorrow. So that's one to watch if you have the ability to stream that game. I will just leave it at that. But yeah, we'll see what happens with his ice time the rest of the year in the SHL. That's the one thing I have for that. So.
Yeah, I was wondering if his recent performance in any way swayed the Sharks towards drafting him. Really quick start with 5 goals, like you said, in 4 games in the top league in Sweden. But I also remember he scored the game-winning goal back in the World Junior Championship this previous year, scoring 2 goals for Finland in that tournament. So that's a pretty good representation there. He's a little bit older than a lot of the guys that are being drafted. He's at 20, I believe, right now.
Yeah, he's a D+2.
Exactly. But apparently he's got a solid shot. He's a physical player. So could be another nice add in the 7th round for the Sharks.
Yep. Indeed, and you can just get, again, a gem in the rough would be huge for this development squad, for sure. Now, to I think the pick that Mark is probably going to get really excited about, because we've kind of gone over to him for being a UMass guy, but Timothy Spicerov, 210th overall in the 7th round, 5'11", 210. Went to the Culver Academy, the high school in Indiana, put up some really sweet numbers, and of course, he has committed to UMass. So, Mark, I'll put you on the spot here. Who we've banked on about Mario Ferraro, John Leonard. We expect you, COVID standards being required, of course, to check him out if you're able to. But high school kid in Indiana. I mean, but now that being said, he is from from Moscow. So I'm not sure how he ended up in Indiana, but what do you think of this kid?
Definitely my favorite pick of the day due to the UMass connection. I just love keeping this UMass and the Sharks connection alive. I mean, it started with PJ Fenton long ago, and since then we've had Justin Braun, Matt Irwin, James Marcoux, who played in the AHL, and John Leonard, Mario Ferraro. It just keeps on happening. So every time I see a draft that's going to have some UMass guys eligible and being ranked, I always get a little bit excited. He actually was the 4th UMass player or commit who was taken in this draft. And it's really hard to get a read on him. It also is a long way off. Apparently, he's not even going to be with UMass until possibly the 21-22 or 22-23 season.
Yeah, I heard that too.
So we don't exactly know where he's going to play. I believe Muskegon also owns his USHL rights, but there's no word as to where he's possibly going to be playing, I believe, next year. But his numbers were amazing in the high school, the team he's playing for, more than a goal per game. But rumor is he was on a pretty weak team, kind of a one-man show there, and they're getting pounded on most nights. But once again, the connection's alive for me, so just more opportunities to go watch Sharks prospects in college.
I can't follow that.
All right. With that, all right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Skylar Greenberg has a good question that I think will help kind of wrap up the draft portion of this. I don't know if you want to get to it now or in a little bit, but it's a good question in the chat.
From Skylar in the super chat again, thank you very much. We are 3 drafts into DW Jr. running the scouting department and running the table today. How do we feel about his drafting style compared to Tim Burke? Of course, Tim Burke was originally the head of scouting for the Sharks, and now this is again. We saw Ryan Merkley. We've why am I blanking on our? We didn't have one last year, the first rounder. That was for the Evander Kane deal. But what do you think of the picks that he's materialized running the scouting department?
I like his drafting style. He seems to reach for upside, which that's always been my draft theory. Reach for the stars with these players. I mean, you can always go into free agency or trade for already established NHLers. Sign guys a lot of times, in our case, from Europe. There's always ways of getting those depth players who are going to be 3rd, 4th liners. Obviously, the best ones aren't so readily available, but I just love the idea of always going for a player that you see severe upside with. The Merkley pick was obviously very risky, but it looks like it's going to pay off. As of now, he's improved drastically each year defensively, and his offensive game can't be questioned. It's among the best we've seen coming out the junior ranks for defensemen. So I like his style. He's bold, and that's how you have to be, in my opinion, with drafting.
Yeah, and he's bold where he needs to be bold. Like, we've had so many drafts, especially when Ian and Jerk and Drew and I covered them, where we were saying he's a solid, dependable player. That's his best asset. About like 75% of the Sharks draft picks since we've been doing this. So it's nice to be able to say, this guy's got a bunch of skill, this guy's really quick, this guy's very smart and has skill, or gritty with like skill. And I like that it was focused. Like, this is the first time in a while that I feel like the Sharks honed in on a real need, and that need is wings, and talented wings, because you've got guys like Wiederer and you're taken and players like that they're there and they can fill roster space, but are they going to really contribute? I don't think so. So it's nice to feel like, hey, the Sharks can go places with these picks. I'm not saying they're the best picks, because we didn't get Tim Stützle with the 3rd overall pick like we could have, but all that considered, I think the Sharks did a great job to these last 2 days with the draft, and I do commend Doug Wilson Jr. for that.
And of course, Tim Burke still has a little bit of say as the assistant general manager, but you can definitely tell that there is a big change as how to this team runs this draft, and you give kudos to Doug Wilson to seeing that they needed a change. You have to have a noticeable difference. But Mark, I'll come to you. Are you surprised that they did not go goaltender or defenseman in this draft? They strictly just stayed with, for the most part, outside a couple of them, with small, speedy forwards that have some skill to them.
Not surprised about the goaltender not being selected. I'm surprised that with 9 picks, you didn't end up choosing one defenseman. That's kind of crazy that their best player available for each pick was a forward. But, hey, they have some depth in the system already on defense. So they felt the greater need was forward. And if the guy at the top of their list was a forward, I don't see any issue with taking all forwards. I mean, we're bound to hit on at least 2 or 3 of these, right? I mean, 9 guys with a lot of skill hopefully pays off.
And I actually wasn't so surprised about defense guys in the sense of the Sharks have been drafting defense heavily drafting defense the last couple of years at least. And as AJ likes to say, the Sharks are very poor at developing defensemen. So I'm okay with them going with forwards. I think forward was a glaring need for the Sharks. So using all the picks for forwards, I'm okay with that. I thought they would get one goalie with one of the 7th round picks, but it's okay. I mean, defensively, look, we got Ferraro and Merkley, and Jake Middleton's a serviceable player. He's not so young anymore, but you get free agent pickups like DeSimone and a trade from Milosh, signed Tony Sund, drafted Hatakka and Nizev. So I think the Sharks have enough in the cupboard. Pasnichuk was a free agent signing as well. So I think we're okay.
Both Pasnichuks, if I'm not mistaken, both came from Arizona State, if I am correct there. For defensemen, and Jerk saying it there. I mean, you do have a lot of guys in the system. It just looks a little weird. But again, we've mentioned it before. Losing those numbers from and let's be honest, they aren't ready yet to fill the likes of Pavelski, Nyquist, Donskoy that we mentioned throughout all of last season. So you do need the guys like Meyer, Couture, Kane, Hurdle to have some depth. Pashnuk. Sorry, Jerk. I'm sorry. Okay, I will. It's like Canuck. No, it's Pashnuk. Sorry.
Yeah, I as soon as I said it, I went, whoops.
And you didn't correct me. Come on, man. Come on. We go to you and Dan Rusanowski for these things. So that concludes our draft recap. Let's get set ready for probably what's going to be one of the more crazier free agent frenzies to date. I mean, you have guys that aren't getting qualifying offers or getting renewed, like Anthony Duclair. I think that's on there. I know Jerk's kind of high on Abdelkader for San Jose, but what surprises you going into free agency? And for that matter, I thought Jacob Markstrom would have been signed by now for Vancouver.
Yeah, they clearly must have differences on what he's expecting to be paid. But I'm not necessarily sure how surprising it really is. I mean, without the cap going up, and a lot of these teams are probably going to be strapped for cash, I think players are actually going to be surprised on some of their contracts that are offered to them. I don't think guys are going to get quite the boosts that they would have expected in prior years. But there are some good names available that definitely would provide depth offense, that if the Sharks were to go that route, which I don't know if they necessarily will, they could go after.
I think that the Canucks can afford to lose Jacob Markstrom in the sense of they do have Thatcher Demko right there waiting in the wings. Is he ready to take the starting job? I don't know, but he's close. So if you're going to sign Jacob Markstrom, it'll probably be a 6, 7, maybe even 8-year deal because it's internal. At that point, why keep Thatcher Demko? So for me, yeah, the Canucks want to keep Markstrom, but he's not just going to sign a 1-year deal until Demko's fully ready. I really think Jacob Markstrom ends up in Minnesota, especially now that Matt Murray was traded today. That's where I thought he was going to go. He ends up in Ottawa. So I think Markstrom could very well end up in Minnesota. Just a hunch, but I don't see him coming back to Vancouver.
Kind of quickly treading back into the goaltending draft, Vince G, one of our good followers, regarding goaltenders for this class, it was a scare-off better than Blomqvist, Dawes, and good luck taking a flyer on anyone else, in my opinion. So, yeah, and Mark, this one's for you, bud. I really loved what we saw from Ferraro. I think 5 years down the line, that's going to be seen as one of the steals from that draft. You brought the idea of Mario Ferraro when he was, a year or two away from showing up in the Sharks, and I thought he played great in his first year in San Jose.
Yeah, you have to be pretty happy with our depth on defense, and he's another example why, because you don't think of him as a prospect anymore. Now he's played a full season, but you have to remember he's very young. He's only one season into his career, and he's just a guy that you have to be impressed with after that full season. He never stops skating, ever. Like, you'll never see him take a shift off. That guy has a motor like no one I've seen before, and they love him in the locker room, and I think he's going to be one of those guys who I'm not sure necessarily how high he'll climb up the defenseman ranks. Maybe he'll top out at like a fourth defenseman or a third defenseman, but regardless, he's going to be a valued member of any team he's with. So I'm hoping the Sharks keep him for the long haul.
Yeah, no, I think he's been a phenomenal defenseman, actually made Braun and maybe in a sense Dylan expendable with his defensive play. Jerk weighing in, can actually extend Markstrom and move Demko in a package for OEL. You kind of also need to figure out the whole expansion draft thing, because you don't want to lose one of those guys freely to Seattle down the I-5.
Right, exactly. Otherwise, you end up in a Florida-Tampa situation with the Vegas draft where you're severely overpaying so that the expansion team doesn't take someone like Demko or Markstrom.
Right. Also, a lot of Morocco 323. I'm high on Melnichuk. Melnichuk seems to be the guy of the future. Also, of course, Zachary Emond, who will be in. Well, he'll be in the Quebec League, correct, Kevin?
Yeah, he's playing an overage year. There, I all of a sudden forgetting what team he's on, but because I want to say Big Homo, and I know that's wrong.
Pronounced? Is that correct?
What? Oh, is it Ruan Noranda?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. The where Timo once was. Yep, and so Kyle Hipwell says, I feel bad for the Sharks having to go up against Kopitar, Turcotte, and Byfield for years to come. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out. LA looks like they're going to be stacked, and it's going to be, quite honestly, a fight to get into the playoffs the next few years, especially if they're developing up. So in that sense, Mark, and I'll begin with you, what's Doug Wilson's approach to Friday? I mean, there's been interest and there's been rumblings that they might be interested in Bobby Ryan. I do like Anthony Duclair as well. What do you think is out there for San Jose? Because it's like, what, $9 million, if I'm not mistaken, that the Sharks have to play with right now, unless they make some sort of move.
Yeah, somewhere around that. I think it's going to be. It won't be a surprise if Wilson doesn't make any big moves at all. I really don't see him going after or actually getting a first liner. We don't have the cap space for it, and I just don't see it happening. I could see us getting a middle six player. I like the idea of bringing in Bobby Ryan cheap. I would be very happy to see us go after some of those other guys. Once again, emphasis on speed. Athanasiou is available now. Would like to see that as well. I think Duclair probably is expecting a little bit more money after that season he just had, which was pretty solid. So I'm not sure if necessarily he'd be within the Sharks' range, but I think the focus will be a middle six forward. If you could get that second liner under the cap, that would be great. But you never know with Wilson. He could also just still be working to do a trade.
And to throw in that you have to re-sign Kevin LeBanc, you potentially might want to. You could sign Joe Thornton and Stefan Nason out there as well. Those are big names that the Sharks have to deal with the free agency. Kevin, what do you say with you? What does San Jose do on Friday? I know they can't probably do much, but is there something you think?
I think Bobby Ryan's their best bet. So Ian and Hockey Jerk and Drew and I have all put together where we think players will sign. Hope to get that list out to you guys for a free agency show on Friday. I know I'm already wrong about a couple of things. I'm the only one who did not pick Bobby Ryan to sign with the Sharks out of the four of us. But I think he'd be a really good signing for the Sharks because the Sharks do need someone now who has a lot of puck handling skill on the wing. I think the Sharks are just going to stand pat, to be honest. I know you mentioned Eric Anthony Duclair. I worry about he's had a history of being a diva. It's why the Rangers let him go. It's why the Coyotes let him go. The Blackhawks legitimately let him go, just didn't tend a qualifying offer to him. And he keeps bouncing around from team to team. He's got so much talent and creativity, but he bounces around so much that it's a buyer beware situation for me with him. So I don't know what else is out there that the Sharks can afford to do when you're talking about top six players. I think Athanasiou would be nice, but he's a middle six guy to me.
But could he be a depth guy that the Sharks could use down, for a filler?
Certainly, but I think the Sharks have too many of those already because we're projecting Ryan Donato to be in the top six, and that concerns me. I like Ryan Donato. I thought the trade was great, but it does concern me that our hopes and dreams of next season are relying on Ryan Donato and maybe Bobby Ryan.
Defenseman wise, that number 6 spot, I know Jerk is mentioning, ideal defenseman would be physical, something like, Radko Gudas or Mark Borowiecki. Help me out, Kevin.
Mark Borowiecki, and that's who I think the Sharks are going to get, actually.
Easier said than done. That's why I have Kevin on here for this one, folks.
And he debuted against the Sharks. I was there, so I remember.
Gotcha. All right. So with that, we shall wrap this up. In case you missed anything or you want to watch this again, check us out on tealtownusa.com or your favorite podcatcher, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and always available at tealtownusa.com. Guys, as easy as those names have been in this last hour, thank you for helping out and being supportive with us. Mark, I'll start with you. Thank you for joining us. I know kind of your debut into our YouTube land. I know you've written a few pieces for us, kind of helped us out, prospect wise. But glad to have you put a face to the Twitter handle. So thank you again for your draft coverage. Your final thoughts and where the people can find you.
My final thoughts, it was a fun day for Sharks fans. I think it was a good draft, and I think it definitely stocks up our system a little bit more. You can find me on Twitter at Mark SJS. I tend to follow a lot of Hockey East and just prospects in general. It's one of my favorite things to cover. So I look forward to being involved in more of this in the future and adding a lot more content on the site.
Appreciate it as always, Mark. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything this week. Kevin, as of course, one of our mainstays. Appreciate it. You as well. Your final thoughts and where the people can find you, good sir.
Sharks had a busy day today, not just with the draft, but they also had to tender their qualifying offers. Antti Suomela ended up signing his, so he's under contract for another year. A two-way deal. I thought that was a little surprised by that, but he accepted it. And Manny Wiederer comes back to the Barracuda. That came out of nowhere to me. But Jeremy Waugh, good luck in your future endeavors. I really did expect him to not be a Shark by the end of the day. However, I thought we might be able to trade him for a late round pick, but he has been sent off to pasture. I really like him as a person. I thought he was a really cool person. I've talked to him 3 or 4 times outside the rink, and I thought he's a funny guy, good personality, good head on his shoulders. So I hope that he's able to pick it up somewhere else and at least have some semblance of the career that the Sharks hoped he'd have when he was drafted with a high second round pick. So, oh, and I'm at Kevin Lacy 22.
I was waiting for that. I was like, wait,
Yeah, where's the cheap plug?
Where's the cheap?
Kevin Lacy 22. There you go.
All right. I'm at PuckGuy14 on the Twitter and the Instagram. Of course, you can follow us at Teal Town USA on the Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Worked really hard to get a lot of content out there for you. Of course, we'll be back with you. We're not sure yet if we're going to go live stream during the free agent frenzy or we're going to recap the day on Friday. So keep an eye out. And of course, always hit that like button, because we're only at 12. Let's get to at least 14. Subscribe, and then of course hit that notification bell. That'll let you know when we go on, and if news breaks, we jump on to break it to you and let you have your say in the conversation. So with that, we are out of here. We will see you sometime Friday. Keep an eye on the Twitter and the Instagram for more of that. And until Friday, keep it real, keep it teal, keep it real teal. Thanks, everyone. Jerk wants to go to the super secret Discord server.
I think I do too.
All right. Have a great night, everyone. We will see you on Friday with the Frenzy.